Hi, everyone. Welcome back to the Adventure Paradox podcast. This is a special guest today. First ever wolf expert, also a mental health worker. I'm going to give her a formal introduction in just a moment. But first, Monica, where in the world are you tuning in from and how are you today?
Hi, thank you for having me. I'm in Westchester, New York. Excited to be here and to talk wolves.
Oh my gosh. I told my children I was interviewing a wolf expert and they were all like, "Awoo, awoo," howling away. They
Yeah,
do want me to ask you about howling and what the different howls mean, but we can get to that. We can get to that. Okay.
of
For those
course.
who don't
Yeah.
know Monica, she is a children's book author and volunteer at the Wolf Conservation Center, also a mental health therapist. She's an animal lover since early childhood. She became an author in 2019 in order to share critically endangered Mexican gray wolf F1505, aka Trumpet story with young children. Can we start there? Because I don't really know what Mexican gray wolf F1505 is or how the numbering system works. Can we start with who's this Trumpet?
Yeah, so she is a Mexican gray wolf, and they are a subspecies of the gray wolf. They were in the Mexico and southwestern part of the US. They actually went extinct in the wild, and when the numbers were dwindling down, they actually captured the last remaining wolves, brought them into captivity to create a breeding program to build those numbers back up. And then they were reintroduced back into the wild into the Arizona, New Mexico, and Mexico areas. And Trumpet F1505, that just means she's the 1,505th wolf that was born into that breeding program. And so that's her official name. That way there's no confusion. Not that there's any more trumpets named out there, but sometimes some of these wolves get a nickname like Max, and then there could be
Mm.
multiple wolves. So this is her official name. And but Trumpet is pretty cool, so we'll just call her Trumpet.
And how did you meet Trumpet? That's very interesting, but like, how did you connect with the story of Trumpet and understanding of the numbering of wolves and reintroducing them to the Western United States and their extinction also?
Yeah, I started volunteering at the Wolf Conservation Center and I didn't know that trumpet existed. I actually didn't even know that there was a subspecies of Mexican gray wolves and that they were critically endangered. So I started learning about the species and that then at some point I started helping the curator with animal care, and that's where I learned about trumpet. It was two different staff members at the Wolf Conservation Center that started giving the snippets of her story. And when I started to learn about that unique story, I was like, this is perfect for young kids. And children's books are a great way to tell a story for young kids. So I decided to write the story with their permission, of course.
Very cool. And where is the Wolf Conservation Center and like how did your work with them begin?
The Wolf Conservation Center is in South Salem, New York. It's probably about, I guess, an hour north of New York City. And I started volunteering there, I believe it was like 2016, 17. And originally started volunteering there. I assisted with the education department. They have private groups, not private and public groups. They have programs where people can sign up and go. And so I assisted with that process, bringing the group to the classroom there and also some questions. So I learned a little bit about the whole wolf program, the Wolf Conservation Center, and also these critically endangered species, which includes also the red wolf. And so then it was more when I started assisting with animal care that I really started to learn about these wolves and about a lot more about the program. So that was a really great experience.
So powerful and something that I know will really resonate with our audience is this deep connection when you actually begin to care for an animal and know it in its day-to-day life, right? How it wakes up, when it's hungry, what it's thinking about. Have you always loved wolves? Was this a childhood passion or just curious?
No, it I've always loved all animals, but I wasn't one of those persons that was loved wolves from the get-go. I sometimes call myself a convert, even though I didn't hate wolves or anything, but it really was my sister-in-law who loved wolves, and she was the one who found the Wolf Conservation Center. And through that process of me just volunteering there, that's where I really developed it's and I wouldn't necessarily say it's love. I would say it's an immense respect.
Mm,
Wolves being having that social construct, that pack dynamic, they're so much more similar to us than normally we think about. And they're also highly intelligent and just resilient and so capable that I think that's what really got me to
mm.
just be out.
Yeah, that's really powerful. This idea of an immense respect, like maybe not necessarily a love, but an immense respect. And also, shout out to your sister-in-law for her deep love of wolves and bringing you into this work,
Yeah.
this incredible book and story that you've created for the next generation and often for the caretakers or parents or guardians who might be reading this book. Can you tell us more about the story that you wrote for children about Trumpet?
Yeah, Trumpet's story originally was supposed to be one children's book. And it really was too long for that. So now it's a series. Right now there's 4 books in her series. Started off with her miraculous birth. So there were some fertility issues with her father. She is the only descendant from his line, and he was the number one genetically distinct Mexican gray wolf in the entire program. And if it wasn't for her, his line would have died out. So she was considered a miracle birth. And that's how she got that additional nickname, which kind of made me feel like this is the perfect title for a children's book story. And I also learned how she got the nickname Trumpet with her little howl, like loud howls. So it just fit perfectly. But also her life, it does highlight various aspects of conservation in a unique way. And so I wanted to include all of that. Additionally, I wanted to include pup development, which is so exciting to see how rapidly they develop. But I wrote it in a way that kids could enjoy, where it's funny and silly and also relatable. Her seeing the same things that kids will be seeing. That's why it ended up being a lot longer than I had, I guess, anticipated. So exciting way to write that and bring her story to life and share, I would say, a more realistic version of a wolf story. In these books, I don't have people snuggling with the wolves, cuddling, being really close to the wolves. When it is a situation, for instance, I highlight a health check. I always highlight that Trumpet is scared. She is not raised by humans. She was raised by her parents, and therefore retains that fear of humans. So anytime that she's close to the humans, I emphasize that she is scared. And typically, I don't have the humans and the wolves on the same page very often. So just to highlight that they are separate. I also went through the illustrations with the illustrator Maddie Moore. She did an amazing job. But I really wanted kids to connect with the wolves and not the people in this story. The people are important. They're all real people. They work at the Wolf Conservation Center or somehow affiliated volunteering at the Wolf Conservation Center. But I really wanted that emotional connection with kids to be with the wolves. So the people in the story, you can't see their faces, like I have part of their face covered or sideways or the back of their head. But with the wolves, you see their full faces, their emotions. And that was really important to me because I really wanted that connection, the kids to relate to the wolves.
This is so cool. And I'm sorry I haven't been able to look at the books yet, but I love everything you're talking about. And I know that there's so much depth, so much going on behind what you're presenting in the story, all of this thought of keeping the humans and the wolves separate. And you tapped on fear, which is very common, especially folks. I'm a horse worker. I do a lot of work with people, taking people on adventures with horses and with animals in nature. And it's really interesting when someone comes upon that fear and the prey predator piece. I've been up to our Bear and Wolf Discovery Center up here in West Yellowstone and looked a wolf in the eyes very closely. And I felt quite naked, to be honest. Like I felt seen on such a deep level. Whoa. I'll never forget that with a glass pane, like really seeing so close into the soul. And I'd love to hear, especially since you work as a mental health therapist, your thoughts on fear, like the human condition, and also as a wolf expert, ideas about prey, predator, and some of those similarities, since we, with both eyes in the front, do identify in nature as a predator. I'd love to hear your thoughts on that.
Yeah, as far as the fear for us from wolves, or our fear of wolves, let's put it that way, is ingrained through these kind of stories that we've been told as either young kids, or the big bad wolf stories, or just commentary. I can't tell you how many times I've heard people say, "Oh, the wolf's going to eat you." And with young kids, that really does resonate. And especially fear is a powerful thing. If you are introduced to something and there's an immense fear associated with that introduction, that solidifies in a mind. That's very hard to get rid of. Then when you're trying to correct that false image, that initial image, it really does take a lot longer. It's a lot more difficult to, for someone to get rid of that fear and correct that image. That's one of the reasons why I wanted these books to be for younger kids, kids ages 3 to 8. But I really wanted these books to be one of the books that can be the first introduction to that a child has to wolves, rather than these big bad wolf stories. Even the ones that are a little bit corrected, that are not quite as gruesome as the original stories, they still say the wolf is bad and the wolf is going to get you. And that is one of the things I wanted to correct, because realistically, wolves don't want to have anything to do with humans. We see it all the time as animal care. The wild wolves, they run away from us. It's interesting. They do fence walks at the Wolf Conservation Center. And a lot of these wolves will be at the other side of their enclosure as we are, as far away from us that they could be, because they just really don't want to have anything to do with us. And they are fear us, they're scared of us. So that's one of the things that I felt was important to highlight, that realistic version. And but also for it to be fun and heartfelt. A lot of the content that I got for these books were through the web cameras. They have live web cameras at the Wolf Conservation Center's website. And the last book, Trumpet Becomes a Mom, with the most recent book actually, she gave birth to those three puppies that are on the cover live on camera. And then we got to watch her nursing the wolves live on camera. And just to see that love, that caring, we got to watch these puppies grow up live on camera. There are a lot of videos, clips of these wolves growing up, and just the playfulness. I just really wanted to highlight that as well in the children's book story.
Oh my gosh, I love that so much. And I'm like right there with you on the webcam, watching this birth and being so close to that intimate nature of birth. And especially what you've shared about Trumpet's birth, like starting the series that way. And that's the most recent. And the cycle of life is like so powerful in what you just said. I also love that your real focus was to change the narrative and really speak to those 3 to 8 year old children who are hearing the big bad wolf stories and that sort of stuff that's been passed down about Little Red Riding Hood and all of that stuff, right? It's a different time today and a
Yeah.
different space and a very different world we live in. And yet there is still this wolf is bad programming. I think our our world and specifically our country is pretty divided right now, and anything you put into the space, that energy can come up. So I feel like we would be remiss not to address the elephant in the room around some of the polarizing arguments around wolves, wolf reintroduction. Here where we live, there's a lot of stuff with ranchers and wolves and livestock and all those different things. And I'd love to hear your thoughts as the spokesperson for Trumpet a little bit and passing on these stories to the next generation about what kids might hear and what different people might be thinking as they're thinking about wolves just in general today.
Yeah, that is one of the reasons why I really wanted to not have the wolves and the people together. Is that's one of the divisive commentaries, is that this is a predator and you're giving a false image of the wolf. And I really wanted this to be more of a realistic image in a way that kids would enjoy, because the science sometimes can be a little bit dry for the younger kids. But I really wanted this one to have that emotion, but it not to be the humans having the emotion with the wolf, but rather the wolves having the emotion amongst themselves as their family. The the polarizing and the divisiveness, I think that's something that we really need to address through dialogue. I think, and it is happening. There are a lot of conservation centers, conservationist groups, organizations, wolf advocates that are having conversations with ranchers to address their concerns, their issues, and to find a better way to mitigate predation from wolves. It is quite rare that a wolf will predate, but it's not, it happens. And both the conservationists and the ranchers really, they really want the same thing. They don't want wolves predating on our livestock. The conservationists want wolves to do what they're supposed to be doing, regulating the wild ungulate population away from the ranches. And obviously, the ranchers, that is their monetary value. So they don't want it. So we both want the same thing. It is how we go about getting there. And there are a lot of ways that are working to reduce predation, sometimes down to zero. There's plenty of ranchers that have no predation. And so the more we can have that dialogue, the more we can work together, I think the better for everyone, including the wolves. So even though they're not part of the conversation, at least we can find a way to encourage them to stay elsewhere, away from the rancher's livestock. And I think that's just a super important thing that we need to be doing more of.
Yeah. Thank you so much. And you just taught me a new word because I've actually never heard predation before. Predate, and I think I've got it. It's like I've heard I've heard preying, like preying on an animal, but you mean because I was like predate what? What's going on? But you mean predatory activity.
Yeah.
That's okay.
Hmm. Yeah.
Never heard that before. Isn't that funny? Yes, and I love acknowledging how the science can be really dry. And I think the most powerful thing I just heard you say is we need to address it through dialogue. And in so many spaces, when it gets
Yeah.
really polarizing or really hot, I think one of the most challenging things is that a lot of people will shut down and just not speak to each other. We have more and more families that aren't able to talk about politics or different things like that. And as a mental health therapist, especially with all of your experience in this space, do you have any words of wisdom for someone who might just feel like, I can't touch that, we can't talk about it, we've just agreed to disagree, like we can't even dialogue about it? Do you have anything, questions or tips for supporting people to continue to have a dialogue around a difficult conversation when they might feel silence is the better space?
And sometimes just taking a breather and having some silence and coming back to a topic can be a really good idea. But I really think that typically we all want the same thing. We want love. We want our ability to flourish. We want safety. We all want these things. It's often just how do we get there? And sometimes if we would just be a little bit more open to new ideas, a lot of times it's just easier to be set in our ways and think that's the only way. But if we would be open to new ideas, we can have a dialogue. Sometimes we can agree to disagree. Sometimes we can forge a new path. And what we're finding is that there is a lot of success in the way that they can mitigate and reduce the predation that wolves have, that there are a lot of different ways that are working. And so I think that, and there are a lot of ranchers that are very open to this. It's not that they just want all wolves to be eradicated. What they want is that they want their livestock to be safe from predation. So they are, a lot of them are very open to this. Some of them, maybe we need to have a little bit more dialogue and a little more encouragement. But I think that things are moving in a good direction right now. There are a lot of facilities and groups that are making good headway with this, and we just need more of it.
Excellent. Thank you so much. And I think, again, that echo that at the end of the day, we really do all want the same things and to stay focused on that. Keep the main thing, as Stephen Covey would say. I know you
Our
work
common
under,
ground, our no.
yeah, yeah, for sure. Common ground, exactly. I know you work under a pen name, and that pen name came from your ancestors. Will you tell us a bit more about your pen name and also your beloveds who you chose your pen name or were inspired by, what they were like and what you think they valued in life?
So my pen name is Leokadia George. Leokadia is my great grandmother on my mother's side. She was the matriarch in our family, and she was a strong woman. I was young when I met her multiple times, but she just had this strength, even in her 80s, and you could just feel the strength. And I was a little scared, I'm not gonna lie, but when I found out a little bit more of her story as I got older, I just absolutely respected her ability to save our family and lead our family. And I just really wanted to tip my hat to her and also honor her. Now we get to talk about her. And so I love that aspect of it. George is my grandfather on my father's side. So I just put the two together. So even though they never met, and so he was just very intelligent and fun. We have pictures of him. He was part of this club and where they would walk on stilts. They would just go from town to town and on these like huge stilts, not like the ones that are like, I don't know, 6 inches off the ground, but it looked like it was like 7 feet, 8 feet off the ground. I was like, how did you not fall? And all the pictures that we have of him, just this kind smile on his face, you really could see that he was a genuinely nice person. And so it was great to be able to put them in as a pen name, and it's fun to talk about like when I talk to the rest of my family too, they really like that too. They like to remember these amazing people.
Do you remember ever talking to them about just, I know this might seem like a totally random question, but about wolves or like their experience of wildlife or nature or any of the aspects that have come into your stories?
So I never met my grandfather. He died when my father was 3. All we have is the stories from my grandmother and then the pictures. So I never got to talk with him. And as far as my great grandmother, I did not really talk to her that much. We talked around dinner or meal times, but when I tell you that this was a strong woman, like she walked strong, I often would just stay back. I was very shy as a young girl. It was my great aunts who I would gravitate to when we would visit them and cuddle with my great aunt. And but she was a tough cookie, Mom Leocadia, and she had to be. They were going through some very difficult times, and she had to lead the family to safety. They were refugees. So, yeah, I didn't really talk about wildlife with her, and I wish I could have, but she died before I was a teenager. And I actually remember when she was buried, there was another cousin once removed of mine. She was older, and I just remember holding her hand. And as we stood as she was being buried, and she was crying, and I was curious about that because I didn't have that connection with my great grandmother that she obviously had being older.
Wow. I love her name, by the way. Leokadia, did I say it right?
Yeah, yeah, it is beautiful.
Where's that from? I'm just wondering what origin.
So we think that it's actually from or originated in Latin. The only other Leocadia that I know of was from Portugal, and my family originated from France. So
Okay.
that's like multiple generations back, but that's what we suspect that she was named after someone from way back.
Very cool. Yeah, Romance languages, Latin, like very cool. Of course, my husband's name is George, so I totally, you had me at George, so it's easy. And I like this description that she walked strong.
Oh yeah,
And I think that's so powerful, and especially these stories that are so old for all of us, like how we got somewhere and being in spaces where maybe we weren't safe and we really had to walk strong and be careful. And again, like the wolf, of course, you're writing these beautiful books about the miracle of birth and the mothering and like them being together, but also there are these humans and they've got this whole narrative, and there's always multiple stories going on at once, and to explain that to children and let them really see, hey, where are you in this? Take this magical story in of life is really
right.
beautiful. I know people are going to want to buy these books. They're going to want to find you. We'll put all these links into the show notes. But for someone who just might be walking along listening to this podcast, where can people find you? Websites? Where do you hang out on social media? How do you want folks to follow along?
Yeah, if you would like to find me, you can email me, leokadiageorge.books@gmail.com. I also have a bio at the Briley and Baxter Publications website. And so you can learn a little bit more about me. If you would like to follow Trumpet and or the Wolf Conservation Center, they are at newyorkwolf.org, and they are on all Facebook, Instagram, TikTok, all those sites. But I highly recommend checking out those web cameras because it is so much fun to just watch these wolves. Even sometimes even just lounging around is nice and calming to watch them. But that's definitely a high recommendation for me.
I love that. And we will totally link the webcam or the website to the webcam so that folks can go and do that. As we wrap up, last question, because I feel like you led into it with what you just shared about loving the webcam and just hanging out and being with the wolves virtually. This idea of wildness and also what is real. What is the thing you're truly called to? Who are you really? How are you really? You want to say anything about just wildness or authenticity as it relates to your experience of really just being with the wolves and telling their story?
So, as far as wildness, it's something very natural for us. Obviously, now we are often very removed from wildness, but you can always tell that people still love to go back to that. Even in the biggest cities, typically they'll have a kind of natural area. But for instance, New York City will have Central Park, and they'll have a bunch of other parks. But especially if you can get even more into the wilderness, it's a very peaceful, it's a very grounding, it's a very open space, and it's something that is very natural to us. So I recommend doing that any chance that you can, to get out into the walk in maybe a forest or even a beach side or something to let yourself get back to our original space, our original free space. As far as any connection to the wolves, typically they will run away. But, and I think we spoke about this a little bit before we started the podcast, howling. Often, if you're hiking in an area where wolves are and you can hear the howling, it is something that everybody says is just an amazing experience. And I experience it too if I'm at the Wolf Conservation Center and suddenly you start hearing the howling. There's just something where it just goes deep inside you, and it's something that is just so peaceful, freeing, and yet connecting. And so I definitely like to highlight that. In each of the books there is a howling moment, so I recommend howling with your kids. Get a group howl going. It is fun. It's a bonding experience, not just for wolves but also for people, and it's harmonious. You don't have to howl the same, but when you get together with a group howl, it's just a wonderful, fun experience.
Oh my gosh, I love that so much. And thank you for bringing the howl in at the end because I might have forgotten. And we have a big family of howlers. I was at a women's leadership conference the other week and walking with a group of women out of this event, and it was a full moon. It was the beaver moon. It was like a really big super moon. And we just started howling and just I'm curious because again, I feel like I would be remiss not to ask you, do wolves howl more around the full moon? Is that a myth? When does the howling happen? By day, by night? Tell us a little more about the howl before we sign off here.
Yeah, so it is a myth in a sense. So wolves typically hunt dawn and dusk. So they like that low light, but during a full moon, they won't howl because it's a full moon, maybe more often, but they might howl a little bit more often because it's lighter out when there's a full moon. And so it just extends their ability to hunt, or during their preferred moments to hunt. So there might be a little bit more communication during that time just because it's a little lighter out. But as far as them howling just because it's a full moon, that's just a coincidence.
Thank you for clearing that up for me. And all those other full moon howlers, that is a human thing, y'all.
Yes.
All right, Monica, it has been a gift to be with you. Thank you to our audience for listening. If you loved this, share it with a friend. If you are looking for an amazing gift for the 3 to 8-year-old in your life, check out this awesome series. And again, this will all be in the show notes. Please leave us a review, subscribe, follow along, and we appreciate you so much. And thank you, Monica, for your work and incredible wisdom that you shared with us today. Hats off to you.
Thank you.